Let's talk about some of the reasons why I would never be able to worship the Christian God again. I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. However, all of this conversation applies to all of Christianity because it's all the same foundation. So around the time that I was 19, I started to work at a school. I worked with first graders and I loved them so much. It was around then that I started to question, why would God kill these first graders if they didn't worship him? I had students who were Hindu, who were Muslim. I had a lot who were Buddhist. So I was just really confused about, if I loved my students and I was created in God's image to value things like love and life and justice, why am I sitting here questioning whether or not it's fair if God smites them all because they simply don't worship him? There was never an answer that was given to me that satisfied me. Why would a loving God ever set up a system to work that way? And then Bible stories like the one of Job are insane, honestly, because how are you going to have an extremely faithful servant and still not be satisfied, still want more, and to feel the need to prove yourself so much to someone who already doesn't think that you should be an authority, Satan, and rebelled for that exact reason? Can you imagine how big of an ego God must have to be able to reason that it's okay for him to not only kill all of Job's children, but also kill his livestock, remove his ability to take care of himself and what used to be his family, because he doesn't have one anymore besides his wife, and then turn around and say, see, no matter what you did, Job is still going to serve me? That's honestly so crazy. If God were a boyfriend or a husband, we would be calling him very abusive. To be able to be saved, you have to be born into the right time period to have access to Christianity. You have to be literate. You have to be within the right class, again, to even be literate, to again have access to the Bible. You have to oftentimes be the right gender. It's like you have to put all of these different puzzle pieces together that are not accessible to everyone across history. Hope that you piece everything together the way that God supposedly wants you to, in a day and age where he no longer speaks to people, no longer performs miracles from heaven, and you just have to hope that you figured it out the right way. And if the next person doesn't, they're screwed. How is that fair at all? It's not. And if so many people can sit here and try to reason about why that's okay, and there are answers pertaining to why it is okay that God behaves that way, again, because we're made in his image, how is that fair in itself? How can God create sin and death, tie it to an object within the first human's home, and say, if you partake, you're fucked for all of time, and so are all of your children that will ever exist? They couldn't even comprehend what was at stake. How could you assign such high stakes consequences to an action that the participants genuinely cannot conceptualize? It's like trying to explain a color to someone who has never seen color before. There's nothing that you can do to replace that experience. The way that Jehovah's Witnesses explain away why all of this is happening, if there is an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving God, their explanation is that God is allowing all of this to happen to prove that he is the only one that has any right or ability to rule over humans. So they have this illustration that it's like having a class of students and the teacher is trying to explain how to do a certain math problem, and a student thinks that they understand how to do it better and that there's actually a different answer to the entire problem, which is what they reason Satan did by rebelling against God and taking some of the angels with him. So the teacher allows the student to go up to the board and try to solve it in front of everyone, to allow the student to pretty much, I guess, make a fool of themselves, and then the teacher will step in and do the problem right and prove that they are the ones who have the right and ability to be teaching the class. Again, I work with students. Let's say that my students want to play a game a certain way, but they end up hurting each other. And I've already told them, you are not to play it that way. And I was very clear. I laid out my instructions crystal clear, and they're still not listening. Would it ever be okay for me to sit back and watch harm come to these children just to prove that I was right the whole time? No. In fact, I would get in so much trouble. I would probably not be allowed to work with children any longer. That's how serious it is. Why would a loving God ever allow suffering to go on this long just to prove that we as humans don't have the capability to lead ourselves? That, again, is some psychopathic shit.